Hello, everyone. Welcome to yet another episode of The Second Take. I am your host, Pastor TK. Thank you for joining us. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. If you haven't followed us on our Facebook page or any of our social media platforms, please make sure you do and share this broadcast with your loved ones so that they can also partake in today's topic. And today we are talking about gimmicks. Now, the subject itself is a bit self-explanatory, but it's also a bit nuanced. It's a bit, you know, what does it mean? And we're not going to waste time. We're going to get straight into the presentation and pretty much talk about exactly what the what brought about this line of thought, this reasoning, and we're going to start off by defining what a gimmick primarily is. So, a gimmick is, well, the noun for gimmick is the descriptive word, is a trick or device intended to attract attention, publicity, or trade. So, this, if we look at the first word, attention, it could be something that someone does personally, like maybe a child or a spouse to get attention. On a broader scale, it could be governments, it could be musicians, artists, etc. But something to try and gain attention. And the second part, publicity, that is now more on the publicity side, like with politics, with artists, producers, directors, marketers, and so on. Trade, it could be with business people when they bring a product to the forefront in a way that attracts attention and has people know about the product or a service. And this is usually used with most major companies nowadays. With the advent of social media, we've seen a lot of gimmicks, like way too many to mention. So this is more relevant today than ever. Um, the verb part of verb meaning of this word is basically to alter or augment with an extra device or feature. So this could be, you know, Nike's maybe putting out a limited edition with like a signature of an athlete or a movie star or musician, so that's like a device that's added to something that already exists to enhance its appeal to the audience. So basically that's what a gimmick is and how a gimmick can be applied. And that being said, the reason that this subject was, you know, something I felt speaking about is I was just going through, like, this week, there were certain things that were happening, and I was, listening to some music at some point, and I was, you know, just reminiscing. I was listening to like very old school gospel stuff, like choral stuff, not choral like hardcore choral, but choir stuff like Donny and Michael W. Smith and so on, and James Smallwood, Richard Smallwood, sorry, um, Pastor Rance, the list goes on. And I was just looking at what the difference is now and what's going on. I mean, the difference between then and now, and we're gonna get into it. But that's just what brought this to my, you know, I think it was a culmination of a lot of things. Because there was also this show I was watching, and this artist came on, and she was just talking about, her experiences in the industry and the people she's encountered, and how she's viewing the world now. She's 72, and how she's viewing now with the change in the landscape in the entertainment industry, and how it all feels so, for lack of a better word, pun, no pun intended, it feels gimmicky, you know And I was like, huh, it is, one of those things where when you sit down by yourself, you kind of start looking at certain things and thinking of how a lot of stuff is bubblegum, and might not have as much substance as you would want. Um, because when we seek entertainment or some form of relaxation or whatever the case is from outside sources, there's a you what you seek is what you try to get back, and sometimes it doesn't always come back that way. If you want to be in a space where you're relaxed and you need an aid like music or a movie, where you want to zone out and so on, it's difficult. I find it even difficult to watch a movie, let alone a series, because some of it comes off very not well thought out. The hype behind the thing can actually be bigger than the thing itself. And we've seen this in a lot of entertainment, in this day and age. And it's so sad because I think it comes from, we're now more consumers. We're more of consumers than 2 decades ago, 3 decades ago, 5 decades ago. There were still consumers, but now it's so direct. Right now, as I'm sitting here, I might just think, oh, I need this shoe, and just go online and be like, purchase. And if I want express delivery, 24 hours, I can get that. If I want it to arrive in 3 days, 7 days, whatever the case is, I can get that. And I think that's what's the competition is rising, the needs of the people are rising. And so I believe corporations are creating hype to compete, to stay afloat, to be profitable. But the worst part would just be to make money off of people, and I think that's where gimmicks are coming into play a lot these days. Um, So many artists, studios, marketers, producers use some sort of divisiveness to get attention to their product. And this is not just for today. Even back in the day, there was a book, I spoke about it, on I think it was last week's episode, where Edward Bernays literally created gimmicks and storylines, fake news, if you will, about certain products, so that people just feel drawn to them. Their attention is drawn by that marketing strategy, and they would end up purchasing these products or using these products simply because of the campaign behind the product, not necessarily of what the product does. He had a campaign for Coca-Cola, he had a campaign for cigarettes, and the campaign is credited with um, pushing cigarette sales in that period for women, simply because he packaged it as a sign of rebellion against the system that was trying to oppress them. And so the gimmick worked, and it made money for the corporation. But what was the detriment? What was the result of it? Was it was it something that was beneficial to society, to those women? Or those women were simply duped into believing that this thing was a symbol of their freedom. The same happened with diamonds. Diamonds was simply an industrial mineral. It was used for industrial cutting, and now and again they were used as jewelry, but to a lesser extent than gems. Like rubies and emeralds and um, pearls. But then the diamond industry, because they found a reserve when they were mining, that was huge. They saw profit, during, I think soon after, not soon after, but a couple of years after the scramble for Africa, they found that, we have so much reserves of this in South Africa, in Zimbabwe, and in so many African countries, DRC, and so on. What can we do with all this stuff? And they created a campaign about diamonds being a girl's best friend. And they pushed the narrative that if you don't have a diamond ring, what's an engagement without a diamond ring? And therefore, the diamond engagement ring was born. And the more expensive it was, the more that engagement meant. And in society, women started feeling as if you didn't have a diamond ring, then you're not really engaged or married. And so they pushed that. That was another gimmick. And so it's not a modern thing. It's just that now it's in our faces. It's more visceral. It's used in a more invasive way. It's no longer subliminal. You know, it's no longer subtle. It's literally like, you know, hey, look at me. I'm a product. Buy me. You need me. That's why you see athletes and musicians and actors promoting products now. We'll look at an example with the Super Bowl in the United States. You know, Cheetos and Sprite and all these products are pushed using celebrity faces. Their presence makes it feel as if, what, if someone that important needs this product, or, for the more intelligent ones, if someone was willing to pay this actor who doesn't come cheap to advertise the product, then this product must be worth it. They have enough money to hire George Clooney, or I don't know, what's his name, the American football player, Brady. If they can hire Messi, if they can hire Ronaldo, then definitely their product is worth it. It's expensive enough for them to be. I mean, they went through the expense of hiring that person, so that product must be worth it. Must be a quality product. And so those types of gimmicks are filtering into today's society in a way that's superseding the actual, you know, like what the product actually does. And so we get to this point where the lines start becoming blurred between what's real and what's a gimmick, what's pushed by corporations in order to get people to engage, or to want the product, to be part of the product's life cycle, so to say. You know, that if I'm not in it, if I'm not with this thing, then I'm left behind. If I don't have this particular shoe, if I don't drink this particular drink. We've seen social media influencers even push products, you know, to the extent that they're not only existing online, but they're now pushing into the mainstream. Like, what's his name? The controversial YouTuber, that guy with his energy drink. It's become so viral now, with campaigns behind it. Collect this many and you'll get this. You'll get to meet him, or you'll get to have this product, or be featured in this. You know, all these things to try and draw people just for someone else to make a profit. And that's what gimmicks are primarily being used for right now. Examples that we might have in for example, in music, where gimmicks were used or can be used. There's an artist back in the day, I think he did punk rock, called Gigi Allen. His main push was, he was this antichrist sort of figure. He's not even that famous. if we think about it, his fame probably comes from his controversy, even in the way he died, because he was, doing drugs and so on, the rocker lifestyle. But his gimmick was that he would come on stage and push the envelope every single time. He would either come drenched in blood or have, religious imagery and decimate it, desecrate it in some form, But there's people like that go to those extremes. We have Madonna, even, who's still wanting to be relevant at this day, at her age, by doing such controversial shoots and statements and stage performances, and it's all gimmicks to gain attention. We saw even in the early 2000s when she introduced Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera, and they had a controversial encounter on stage. And those who are old enough know what I'm talking about. And so these types of things are used in order for people to look, you might have been there, but whoa, what's going on over here? And that's primarily what gimmicks are sort of used for in the entertainment industry, for no other reason than to bring your attention to them or to what they're doing. Never mind that the music is not that good. Never mind what the music promotes. But H, we've got a news story. Madonna just did this on stage. And so we have such stuff that is trying to outdo the previous thing, and so on and so on. And some of it ends up being, unholy and just debaucherous. There's some semi-innocent stuff, like when 50 and Kanye had a feud, and 50 declared that if Kanye beat him in album sales in the first week, he would retire from music. That was kind of a friendly-ish type of thing, where it was mainly just for album sales, obviously, but it brought attention to 50 and to Kanye. They were already big artists in their own right, but it kind of put a spotlight back on them, because obviously there was lots of other music going on around that time. But for those 15 minutes, the attention was on them. We have groups like U2 who put out their album for free or with the purchase of an iTunes subscription, and no one even asked them for it, but they did it. We have people creating fake personas online, just for the sake of appealing to a certain audience, like the gangster lifestyle, the gangster background, drug dealer background, like Rick Ross, for example, who was a corrections officer, but portrayed himself as this drug mogul, drug dealer who pushed millions, or whatever the case was. And we have gimmicks where people push a product like it's got some exclusive content, some, or even in a different format, like with Kanye and the STEM player with Donda 2. We could go on and on, deluxe editions of albums. Oh, we had this album, but there's this new one. It's got all the same stuff as the previous one, but we've added 4 new tracks. We've added 4 brand new tracks that you've never heard. It's the same album. And so you have all this. We won't get too much into the other examples that I had put together. But even in movies as well, you see it with directors or production houses, studios pushing movies with alternate endings just so, you purchase the DVD or the Blu ray or watch it on their streaming service. We had Batman release on HBO only. Was it Batman or Justice League, exclusive, and Disney Plus, and all these things just to get attention to that particular platform, to that artist, to that director, to that singer, that musician, and all this, but without the substance of what they're bringing people to, being good for the people that are whose attention is then drawn. And so it brings me back to what I was talking about at the beginning. So this lady, her name is Paulette McWilliams, or Paulette McWilliams. She sang with most of the biggest artists that you could ever think of back in the day. The Luther Vandrosses, the Marvin Gaye's, I think she even sang with Stevie. She sang with Aretha. She sang with I think Patti LaBelle. She pretty much has been around. And one thing she said that resonated with me was that with all these artists, the reason why they're so iconic even to this day was because of their authenticity, their genuine nature. You know, never mind who they believed in or what their spiritual background was, their religious background was, but what they brought forth in terms of being a human being was genuine. And everything they portrayed in their music was genuine. The person you heard on a recording was pretty much their story they put on wax was the person that you would meet. They had their demons, they had skeletons in their closets. But when they sang from a genuine place of yearning, of wanting something. They're people who would sing about love, but maybe they didn't have it in their own lives. We have controversial people like Brian McKnight right now who has issues with his family, but he sang some of the most iconic love songs. We have R. Kelly who sang some of the most iconic love songs. And even his gospel album was coming from a place where you could genuinely hear his cry for help. It was even if you play it now, you can feel it. So that's what Paulette was talking about. That there's certain artists that you can't fake certain things. You can't fake certain emotions. You can write a song and it can be about a certain subject. And, it can be a fun song. It can be a song that connects with the audience in terms of likability. But does it connect with that person's spirit? And so authenticity is not fakeable. There's no such word, but I'm using it. You can't fake it. In the industry, you can fake it till you make it. Obviously, if it's fun, if it's nice, if it sounds good, if it's ear candy, you can make it. But things that resonate with the heart, those can't be replicated, they can't be duplicated, they can't be faked. And that's why you see certain music that has stood the test of time, even not because people push it. You can have the Beatles being pushed on you, and they can be called the greatest band of all time, and Elvis being pushed on you and be called the greatest musician of all time. But genuineness trickles through, even if it's a recording, because the heart behind it, there's something that I can't remember back in the day when I was recording back home, and someone once said, when you put your heart through your lyrics. It's difficult for the person who hears it to turn away, to not feel what you were speaking about or what you were portraying, even without trying to connect with someone else. You were just putting everything that's here onto a recording. And things like that, spirit ministers unto spirit. So if you have a genuinely dark spirit, it communicates, it resonates even through a recording because the spirit of it still carries through. That's why music is that powerful. That's why the devil was powerful in heaven and that got to his head. And he thought because everyone was worshiping through what he was doing, he was powerful. He thought the power came from him, but it came from the medium. And it's the same even today. The media that's being used is powerful. And everything that is used, that is put on it to use it to communicate is powerful. And everything that is put on it to communicate to the recipient is going to go through as long as the spirit behind it was genuine, whether it was dark or it was in the light. And thus, also bringing me back to when I was listening to that gospel music this week. You know, there was a day when I just listened to, uh, you know, gospel from like the 70s, 80s, 90s, you know. And besides the fact that that's the stuff I was listening to growing up, there was a genuineness that could not be faked that was in that music. You know, you have Pastor Donnie and um, you have so many ministers back in the day that would minister through music in a way like worship. We talked about worship in in the previous episode. And when it's genuine, when it's coming straight from heaven through you out to the listener, there's no faking it. That it will minister to the person who's listening to it, regardless of the time period, regardless of who they are, whether they're saved or not saved. And thus, to round off, the reason why I spoke about gimmicks is I'm sadly seeing it not only in the secular world, but also in our world. And it's really sad to see that some music is done simply for the purpose of bringing attention to the person or to the genre. But the one thing that it's missing is bringing people to God. And therefore, as also as a musician and an artist, I even look at myself and say, when I record, when I write, what is the intent? And there's some, not to say that the music, all of it, has no intent of bringing people to Christ. Definitely, there's lots of it out there. It's just that some of some of Christendom is going out into the world and copying what's out in the world and bringing it into the church and bringing it to to, to things that are supposed to be of Christ. And I'm not saying this to bash or to bring anyone down. I haven't mentioned any names. I haven't brought up anyone specifically. But the reason why I'm bringing it up is that we need Christ in everything that we are doing because our mandate is to minister to each other. It's to bring the gospel to the world and to bring people to Christ. That's it. That's our mission. And I pray that as we are creating music, as we are listening to music, let us have that spirit to filter and to be drawn to the things that genuinely want to bring us to Christ and the things that we want to bring people to Christ. I pray that this episode was enlightening and that administered to you in a way, or it spoke to you in some way. Maybe it gave you some music history, it gave you some movie history, I don't know, but that it genuinely spoke to you because the heart behind it is genuine. And I pray that all the content that we release is also coming from a genuine place, and that it will be received as such. And that even when we're being used in our day to day, may we be used of God, and that God ministers through us as spirit ministers unto spirit, and spirit connects with spirit. And so, even the music I try to listen to, I look for the spirit behind it, and not a flash in the pan or a moment that doesn't really resonate in a way that brings anyone that connection that's needed for us to feel whole, to be whole, and to look forward to life, to live another day, and not only another day, but to live eternity with Christ. Thank you for watching. Thank you for taking your time. Be blessed. And don't forget to check out everything else that we have on the channel. I've been Pastor TK, and this has been The Second Take. Be blessed. See you in the next one.